So in part 2, now we're dealing with some fractional exponents that don't necessarily have 1 as the power or the number that we are going to bring the root to. And so let's take a look at this first one. Here we have 8 to the 5/3 power. So we set it up the same way. Remember, the 8 represents the radicand. And we're bringing it to the 5th power eventually, but we're going to take the cubic root of it first and then bring it to that 5th power. So the denominator, remember, that is the number of roots. And then the numerator represents the power that we're going to raise this to once we take it. Now again, as I said before, there are two ways to do it. We could either bring 8 to the 5th power and then find the three numbers that make that, but that would give us a huge number. 8 times 8 times 8 times 8 times 8. And then there are three numbers that multiply to make it, but it would be very large. So it's easier to go ahead and take the roots of the smaller number first and then bring it to that power. So we go ahead and do that. We find the three numbers that make 8. So we did that quite a bit in part 1. Remember, if it's an even number, try even numbers. Odd number like this, you're going to try odd numbers. So the answer is 2, because 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. But we still need to bring that to the 5th power. Well, the 5 times, when we do 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, well, we know that 3 2's make 8, so let's just add on 2 more 2's. And 2 times 2 makes 4. And then multiplied by that 8 gives us 32. So 32 would be the number that we'd end up with there. Well, taking a look at the next one here, we have a 125 that we're trying to find 3 roots for. So the number of roots is the denominator. And I kind of think of it this way. Think of this as like the ground level right here. Roots are underneath the ground, just as the denominator, the index, represents the number of roots. Well, once we find that, bring that to the 2nd power. 3 numbers that make 125. Well, try odd numbers. We know 3 times 3 times 3 makes 27, so let's try the next number higher. Let's try 5, 5, and 5. Well, 2 5's make 25, times by another 5 makes 125. So there it is. 5 is the 3 numbers that multiply to make 125. But we still have to square it. And so once we square it, we get 25. And there is our answer. Now the next one here, we're looking for the 3 numbers that multiply to make 64. And then once we find that, we're going to bring that to the 4th power. So again, same sort of thing. We're looking for 3 numbers that make 64, but 64 is even. Well, we know that 3 2's make 8, so let's try an even number that's bigger than 8. Let's try 4, or it's a bigger number than 2, I should say. Well, 4 times 4 makes 16, times 1 more 4 makes 64. So there it is. The 3 numbers that make 64 are 4. Well, we go ahead and bring that to the 4th power. We already know that 3 4's make 64, so all we have to do is just times 4 by 64. So when we do that, 4 times 4 makes 16. We carry a 1. 4 and 6 make 24, plus 1 makes 25. So 256. Well, here's another example. We've got 36 to 3/2 power. So again, we're looking for 2 numbers now, because that's the denominator, that multiply to make 36, and we're bringing this to the 3rd power. Well, those 2 numbers that make 36, again, try even numbers. 6 times 6 makes 36, but then we got to bring that to the 3rd power. So I know that 6 times 6 makes 36, so let's multiply 36 by 1 more 6. So that makes a 36, carry a 3, 18 and 3 make 21, so 216. That's the number we get when we do 6 to the 3rd power. Well, the next few examples have fractions in the problem. Well, it's the same thing we had done before. Well, when we have an outside exponent, we're going to bring both numbers to that outside exponent. Remember, you're multiplying those exponents. So it's really 2 problems in one. 8 to the 1/3 power and 27 to the 1/3 power. So you go ahead and do that work. 8 to the 1/3 power, remember, it's 3 numbers that multiply to make 8. But then we're raising that to the 1st power. Down below, It's going to be 3 numbers that multiply to make 27, but then we're raising that to the first power. Well, those 3 numbers that multiply to make the 8, we've seen that a bunch of times, that's 2. 3 numbers that make 27, well, that'd be 3 times 3 times 3. Well, again, this is all being raised to that first power. Well, anything to the first power is just going to be that number itself. So 2/3 would be our answer. So it's the same sort of thing on this next one. Again, we have 1 to the 1/5 power. So we just basically raise whatever numbers in the numerator and denominator to the power. And then 32 to the 1/5 power. And so when you set this one up, we've now got our new radicals. We're looking for 5 numbers that multiply to make 1, and raising that to the first power. 5 numbers that multiply to make 32, and then raising that to the first power. So when we do that, we see that 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 makes 1. So it's just going to be 1 to the first power. And then we've seen this already. Remember back up here, we saw that 5 2's make 32. So we know that 5 numbers that make 32 that are all the same would just be 2 to the first power. Well, that just leaves us with 1/2. That would be our answer. So another couple examples here. We have 4 over 49. Well, we're just bringing each of those numbers to the power that's on the outside. So the same thing down below, 49 to the 3/2 power. So when we do that, we're going to rewrite our numbers in that radical form. 2 numbers that make 4, and bring that to the 3rd power. And down below, 2 numbers that make 49. And we're bringing this number to the 3rd power as well. So 2 numbers that make 4, we see that that would just be 2, and that's brought to the 3rd power. And the 2 numbers that make 49, well, that's 7 brought to the 3rd power. So when we multiply that out, 2 times 2 times 2 makes 8. Well, 7 times 7 makes 49. 1 more 7 makes 343. That would be our answer right there. 8 over 343. Well, hey, we see another 343. I think I know what that answer is already without even doing the problem. Well, let's start with the 1,000, though. Again, you're bringing every number to the power on the outside of the parentheses. Same thing down below. 343 all to the 2/3 power. Well, when we see that, we'll rewrite this with radicals. So we're looking for 3 numbers. That's what that index is telling us, the number of roots that multiply to make 1,000. And then we're going to bring this to the 2nd power. Down below, same thing, 3 numbers that make 343. And then bring this to the 2nd power. Well, those 3 numbers that make 1,000, remember 1,000 is an even number. And so I would try even numbers. I would try 10, 10, and 10. And sure enough, you got 1, 2, 3 zeros, that does make 1,000. So it's going to be 10 to the 2nd power. And then we already saw this one. We saw that 3 7s make 343. Again, it's an odd number, so always try odd numbers. Remember that rule. Even numbers, try even numbers. Odd numbers, try odd numbers. So 7 to the 2nd power. Well, 10 times 10 makes 100. And 7 times 7 makes 49. You can just leave the answer like that. So those are some of the problems you'll see on tonight's homework. Good luck.